everybody. Welcome to Wallace Hartley Presents the Podcast, Season 2, Episode 5. My name is Glen Lamont, and I'm going solo tonight with the hosting. Paul is not here. He's actually sick. He's at home sick. He got the dreaded COVID, and he probably, I don't know what's going on there. He could have been injected with all kinds of stuff from Bill Gates, and he may just be a robot now. I don't know. Anyways, I'm so excited about the show tonight. I've been waiting for this for a long time. But first, as always, I got a little message to start things off, and like it or lump it, you got to sit and listen to it. Actually, you don't, but I prefer if you do. Democracy and free speech. These two things have always gone hand in hand, and to be able to voice your opinion in public or criticize your government without being arrested is a sign of a truly free nation. So at what point did the United States of America, Canada, the UK, and parts of Europe start down the slippery slope of censorship? I have a great deal of trouble trying to understand how having an opinion about something, it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's good or bad, right or wrong, is now an opportunity to cancel someone. I will be the first to admit that much of the rhetoric currently out there is deserving of being shut down. But just because I disagree with someone doesn't give me the right to verbally or physically stop them from voicing their opinion. The other part that makes me crazy is that when a person crosses the line, whether it be in a tweet from 10 years ago or an offhanded comment that played out on national live television, without even bothering to explore the context of the comment, everyone is happy to tell that person what a horrible individual they are. The hypocrisy of all this is for a certain percentage of the population who used to have to make do with reruns of Hee Haw and Mayberry RFD, now have an entire network that caters to them. On Fox News, they have a primetime news show that consistently espouses things like replacement theory, supports overturning Roe v. Wade. It also promotes COVID-19 disinformation, conspiracy theories, and LGBTQ2S rhetoric, and that's just fine, apparently. But if a stand-up comic says something in poor taste or goes against the flavor of the month, a cavalcade of Karens is ready and waiting to end their careers permanently. Stand-up comedy, as far as I'm concerned, is the last bastion of free speech. Not more than 24 hours ago, an 18-year-old anti-Semite white supremacist committed an act of terror in a supermarket in Buffalo, New York, where he murdered 10 innocent people and live streamed it. Yet the media is unwilling to label him a terrorist. Elected officials are currently doing their absolute best to do away with Roe v. Wade, and according to one Republican, force women to carry to term the fetus that is a result of rape. So before we go muzzling the only people who aren't afraid to punch up, let's fix everything else that's wrong with our respective nations. And on that very serious little sermon, follow that, I'm very excited to have as a guest on the show tonight a man I have known for almost 40 years. 40 years. He's a Seattle native, just recently moved back there from Philadelphia, where he lived for over 20 years. Well, there, aside from performing in comedy clubs all up and down the East Coast, he was also a realtor, a borough councilman for 2 years. He started performing stand-up in Seattle in the early 80s, has worked all over Canada, the West Coast, the East Coast, the U.S., from Philly and New York to L.A. and Seattle. Please welcome to the show my very good friend who I'm so happy to see tonight, Mr. Richard Graham.
Hey, everybody.
Hey.
I am so happy to be here, especially to be here with you, Glenn. Great. It's so good to see you again, man. So good to see you.
I'm telling you, there are some things that just don't change. I saw, I think I saw it on Facebook, when you got elected as a counselor it was in Royersford,
Yeah.
right? just outside of Philly. And I was like, Ricky
You know,
Graham is a
oh,
politician.
Glenn,
I want to be,
at
yeah.
any moment you could have called in and shut that whole shit down. He says, wait a minute, folks, before you put the last
I
vote in, I got a story I got to tell you. And
no,
yeah,
I just all I could imagine was how you actually, didn't go into stand-up mode when you were debating a particular motion
oh,
or somebody heckled you.
and it was. Now you got to understand, Royersford is uh, Mayberry RFD to the T. I was
It's
like,
I was
oh
there
yeah, oh yeah,
once,
oh yeah, you did come visit. That's right.
and it's all just red
Oh,
brick
oh, I
houses.
mean, people used to drive by my house because they knew the black guy lived there. And right, so I mean, for me to and we would do door knocking. So I'd knock on folks' door, and this is a position you had to get elected by. It wasn't like nobody showed up, so here we'll give it to you. Uh, and so I had to go out and meet the folks, and there were some decisions that they were making that I certainly treated it as they were heckling me, and they got the full force of my years of comedy, right? So it certainly worked its way in there.
But it's funny when I talk to guys who I've known from the early days of stand up, no matter what they're doing, none of it surprises me.
Oh yeah,
If somebody was like, "Yeah, I'm building rockets for NASA now," I'd be like, "Yeah, I
yeah,
believe it,"
exactly.
because comics are, I don't know, we whatever we decide to do, we'll take on we'll take on things, many things that we are not
Oh, but
qualified to
that
do.
was that
Just
era when we first started, Glenn. It was the era of innovation. That's what made you stand out. You could go anywhere, and comedy was cutting edge. It was right off the cuff. You could take it anywhere.
well, now I'm trying to remember. I think the first Seattle comedy competition was what,
19,
1982.
that could
Is
be
that?
right in there. Yeah.
And I was in the 1983 or 4 competition. That's when I got to know everybody
Yeah.
in Seattle. And that's when I met, and that's how I ended up, getting shows. And I was doing a show somewhere one night, and you were on the bill. I was with my girlfriend at the time and heading down to California, but I got some work in Seattle along the way, and then you hit on my girlfriend that night.
Just to pay you back. No, no.
No, I was like, are you doing this in front of me? And you were just like, no, it's fine, man. Don't worry about it. Who are you? We live
That's
together.
funny. No,
And
yeah,
then I think the next time you and I met was in Victoria, and you were with Doug
yeah.
White, and we were on a show. We were on one of
Whoa,
a stew
whoa.
run.
That just saying that name puts hair back on this side of my head. Oh, absolutely.
And Stu's no longer with
Yeah,
us,
I
right?
did hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, he passed away a couple of years ago. But if you hadn't done stand up, if you hadn't done a stew run, as far as I'm
Oh,
concerned, if you didn't survive a couple of weeks on the island with here's your itinerary at the beginning of 2 weeks, here's your itinerary, and then you could just pretty much guarantee half of that is going to be
oh
canceled,
yeah.
and at some point you would be stuck in the middle of nowhere.
And
Um,
there would be like four people in the audience, and
yeah,
one of them was the stripper. Right.
yeah,
Right.
and the other was the
And
DJ.
the thing that made that beautiful was that we couldn't wait to get back there. Once we left, we would book ourselves
I
again, like nothing had ever
I
happened.
know, yeah, I know. And Seattle at that time, as far as comedy went, was crazy. Um, I remember, there was, I think one of the first clubs I played in Seattle was,
The
oh,
Saloon?
geez, the weatherman, the news guy, Wayne
Wayne Cody spot.
Wayne Cody.
Yeah,
Hey, he had
Big
a
Wayne
room.
Cody.
What a dick he was.
Wow, there was a couple of them like that, but Wayne was stood
But
out.
there was also, they did, for a while there, people did elevator comedy.
Yeah,
So like get in the elevator, you had like however many floors it was. I think it was going up to the Space Needle, and you had that many had that many floors to make somebody laugh. I'm like, who decided
yeah,
this was a
yeah.
good idea?
And the thing was, bookers, people who owned restaurants and sports personalities, these guys were in charge of our careers. And they had no clue. They had no clue. They just said, okay, here's a
Oh,
mic, let's throw up a chair, and you go for it. And they were like responsible for where we were going to be comedy wise.
yeah. And some of those rooms were great, and some of them were just memorable. And the one that sticks out in my mind as far as unusual venues, because I think we've all had, play gigs we've done where it's just like, who would think of doing comedy here? But it was the now correct me if I'm wrong. It was the Backyard Tavern.
I know which one you're talking about. It was not
The
Back Street or something like
not,
that.
but they
Backstage.
had a yard in the back with with the
Yeah,
rabbits
yeah.
that would attack you.
And then you got
I don't know how
for those
many.
who are listening, you got to understand. Glenn is this all five of whatever you are. I'll let you add the number. And he comes on stage always in a suit, but he was like the professor that you saw in class. And so getting attacked by a rabbit would be something that Glenn would have to experience. Just right. Of all the people there,
Well,
that
yeah,
rabbit would seek Glenn out.
no, it wasn't just me. Apparently, it attacked a few people. And I didn't know rabbits were vicious. And I don't mind you haven't said that. I don't know how many beers and bourbons
Yeah,
I'd had
yeah.
at that point when the rabbit attacked me. I could have said something to
But
offend it. I'm sure.
in your introduction, you talked about uh, culture, and free
Yeah.
speech, and it was so. When I first got into comedy, there was kind of like a team. When we talk about these clubs and these areas that we worked in, there was a camaraderie. There was a group of comics that we hung together. And in Olympia, the police had shut this club down, and we were all in protest because they were shutting it down because and we were protesting free speech. And so a lot of comics from Seattle decided to drive down to Olympia, the courthouse, and we were going to go there and support, right? And just be a team. And so I'm sitting in the courtroom with these other comics, and all of a sudden a police officer got on stage, and they were talking about how this room was rude and foul language. And next, I'm sitting
No.
there thinking, and next thing the cop says, "Well, they asked the cop, well, what did they say?" And the guy starts going into like this Jody and Buffy joke, and acid and motherfucker this and it was my act, right? I'm like, wait a minute, that's my show. What is he talking about? So I'm down there feeling like I'm being a part of the team, and it's me that they're
When
protesting.
you were the
I mean,
cause of it.
exactly. I'll never forget that. And
Oh
and
my
it
God.
wasn't like I was, Richard Pryor, raw Richard Pryor, or the words were like ass and shit and
Yeah.
small
No, I
words,
know.
and they were. I'm like, is that my act? And it was me, and I never forgot that.
Yeah, and the thing is, when I look back on those early days, when you compare that to
Now, yeah,
now, um, like I cringe at some of the things that I said on
Oh
stage.
yeah.
I
Oh yeah.
literally,
Absolutely.
I'm like, oh my god. And and back then, if it was cringeworthy, they would just, I don't know. Would you just go to prison now?
Yeah. That
Would they
that's
send you to Russia to a
That's a
gulag?
tough one, man. I mean, that's like, the president of Ukraine being a stand-up comedian. How do you square
Yeah.
that?
Well, that, like I said, when comics tell me what they're
You,
doing,
right?
after they get out of comedy,
I
nothing
can't even
surprises me. What
imagine.
are you doing? I'm running a small country.
Yeah, I can't even imagine his set. He's talking to Russia, saying, "Did you really think we needed that building?" Right? It's like what
And that's
you know.
no, that's probably what caused the
In the
war in the
first,
first place was his act 15 years ago. Hey, what do you guys think about that
yeah,
Putin,
yeah,
huh?
he-
He's a bit of a
yeah, yeah. He
knob.
probably insulted.
And don't get me started. Yeah, don't get me started on his
Yeah,
wife. Oh, that's it. We're going to war.
yeah.
I'm nuking you
But
guys.
it certainly changed
Um,
because that's that when I first started, it was I really got into it because there were no rules. It didn't seem like there were rules, and that you could take your comedy dark, light, heavy, anywhere you wanted. And then as I progressed in the comedy, the rules started kicking in, which meant that you had to be more creative in the way you
yeah.
wrote and who you were writing to, which I don't know, might have been a good thing or a bad thing.
Well, I think there was a couple of things going on. First of all, we, in the early 80s, we were just on the doorstep of stand-up comedy becoming, if you were a stand-up comic in like the mid 80s, you were like a
You're a
rock
rock
star.
star.
And that was never a thing
Yeah.
before, right? Like I remember being on the road. I'm sure you've had the same experience. If you've ever had to travel with a band or just work with a band, yeah, none of the women want to talk to the
Oh
comic
no. Oh,
after the show.
oh, oh,
And if they do want to talk to you, it's because like all the other positions were filled, and they kind of just shuffle over, and it's like, well,
yeah, yeah.
I guess.
Well, I guess I'm
How are
stuck
you?
with you. Yeah.
um, but then I don't know, like Robin Williams happened, and so many other, Richard Pryor, who had been doing comedy forever, then really became a
Yeah,
superstar.
that's when they came.
And also, what you saw too was comics doing movies.
Yeah, yeah,
That, do you know what I mean?
absolutely.
Whereas prior to that, I think everybody's goal was Carson.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Yeah, not the Tonight Show, Carson,
and not
and
only
it had to
not
be
only
Carson.
but Carson, and then being called over, just to, right.
Yeah, and being called over. That's exactly. But then, that. I mean, that window was pretty short. I don't know when Carson retired, but Jay Leno took over, and some people were like, "Oh yeah, well, I got to do Leno." For me, I don't know. I grew up in my family, anyways. Tonight Show was a thing, and to me, like after Carson left, not that I ever had a chance of doing Carson, but if I did, it would be with him.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think there was the same prestige. But but that was really because you could, if you did a Carson shot, you could work for the next
Oh
year
yeah.
off of that one
Oh,
appearance alone.
absolutely. And we were trying to even get it on a smaller scale. We were trying to get to the Alan Thicke show, the local show. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Just because.
Oh,
Go
and
ahead.
I was just going to say, what was Ross Schaefer's
Ross Schaefer
show
was
in
another
Seattle?
one. He had his show down here. I can't.
But
I
what
can't
was it?
remember.
Almost Live. Almost
live.
Live.
Yeah, you were fighting to get
Yeah.
on that, just so that you can build yourself up for a potential shot at something bigger like Carson.
but at the same time, I mean, I look back at uh, the comics, just talking about Seattle, and there was such a wide
Yeah.
variety. And I say that because, like, I remember the first time I went and did the Comedy Store in L.A. in Hollywood on like open
Yeah.
mic. There's like 180
Yeah. At
guys.
1:30 in the morning.
Nobody's gonna, nobody's gonna remember you. But it was still a thing. You put that on
Yeah.
your
Oh yeah, I
resume.
did New York.
But what I saw there was, a lot of comics who were almost all the same.
Oh yeah.
Whereas what I saw in Seattle, you had everybody from yourself to Peggy Platt
Bill Nye.
to Bill. Yeah, Bill Nye the Science Guy started on the Seattle comedy circuit. To Lee McKay.
Yeah, which is the rock and roll.
Right?
Yeah.
The outlaw comic. And everything in between. There were so many comics, too many to even name here. But everybody was different. Nobody was doing the same thing.
Yeah, when you talk about that Johnny Carson and being on the Tonight Show, that was the double-edged sword, I think. Because if you look at that, I thought that as soon as that, because that really, shot you to the moon. But what it also did is it put comedy on television. And so you could get 30 different comics talk. Don't you hate traffic tickets? All, everybody doing a line on, don't you hate bus rides? And so not a lot of people said, well, why do I want to go out to a club when I can sit here at home and now watch 30 comics do the same thing that I see live, And so,
well, and especially when like after HBO started doing specials.
Yeah.
So like an hour special, you got an HBO special, and then I don't know when Comedy Central happened, but there was, you're right. There was a lot more stand up on TV than there had ever been. And it was just, I saw so much of that happen here in Vancouver too. So Punchline's Comedy Club, the club I started in.
You introduced me to Punchline, I think it was. You brought me into Punchline.
Yeah, you played a few times. You headlined there. And now that closed in 1992 or 1993, somewhere in there.
Wow. I didn't know it was that long.
Yeah.
Did anything take its spot?
Yeah, it started 19.
Did anything take its place in Vancouver?
No, there was other comedy clubs that popped up. But really, Punchlines in Vancouver was the oldest. It was like 1979, I think. That it started, and then it moved locations. But it was the only full-time comedy club, and then Yuck Yucks came to town at some point, and then there was a club in New Westminster, and then over the years, comedy rooms would come and go. But the heyday of stand-up comedy, kind of. I don't know. It kind of petered out there in the 90s, I think. Mm-hmm. And road work, certainly being on the road, there weren't too many road gigs left, or not any that you would want to do.
And we got to define road work too, because road work, when it was there, it was a different thing. It wasn't this glamorous. Although every now and then you had a great hotel, but it was
every once in a while.
It was a party house, drive for hours and hours and hours.
Oh God, it was and you would go like here in BC in Vancouver. There was like the kind of interior run, so Quesnel and Williams Lake
Nanaimo.
And you'd be staying. Well, the island was a separate thing.
Yeah, that's true.
but the up north, drive and drive for 100
Yeah.
years, and then hey, we're here, and you're like, where's the town?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're in it. There's the hotel, and sharing rooms with
Oh,
comics too.
that's the story.
Grown ass
Oh man,
men,
grown ass men
and sometimes
grown
three
ass
of them.
men that where egos was just because being a comic, face it, you got to have an ego. There's no doubt about it.
Well,
And
yeah.
so it was always cordial, but it was, somebody holding their penis swinging on a chandelier was not unheard of. And you just kind of moved them out the way,
Oh
made
God,
it to your room.
yes. And then, or being asked, hey, yeah, can I talk to you?
Yeah.
Well, I was, in bed watching TV, man. Could you get out of the room? What? I met
That's
somebody. Well, where the hell am I supposed to go?
The hallway.
Nothing in this town is. Yeah, just sit in the hallway in your drawers and wait till I'm done. Yeah, it was just crazy. But what's funny to me is that, stand-up comedy it made for a lot of great stories. But again, as I said before, really the last bastion of free speech.
Yeah.
And when I look at what's going on in both our countries, and then I look at something like the Will Smith, Chris Rock thing, and then Dave Chappelle getting attacked, it boggles my mind. It's like, really, this is where you people want to concentrate on us?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, like I said, we just had the shooting in Buffalo yesterday.
Top.
We have had we had, my God, an insurrection. Like, some people tried to overthrow the government of the United States. This was not Nicaragua, right? This was Washington, D.C., man. And people are crazy enough now. There was a great line by Chris Rock, actually. It was a few years back. And I'm not sure exactly in what context, whether it was in an interview or in his stand-up. But, he said, it's not that white people are less racist. He goes, they're just less crazy.
Yeah.
And he's right. You saw what I've seen in the last 10 years, and both in America and Canada, because when Trump got elected, it gave a lot of people up here in Canada license to say things out loud that they would never have.
And down here, this, I don't know how political your audience is, but Trump came in, opened up the door to crazy. Opened up the door and just, not that it wasn't always, it was always there. That's why when I did stand-up comedy,
Yeah, sure.
I could get on stage and Glenn, it was pretty much, I'm black and you're not, and get a fucking laugh, right? So it's embedded in there. And this fucker just opened up the door and said, I'm not going to hide it anymore. And I think the thing that scares me the most now is that you would think that is an old way of thinking, but the top guy that in Buffalo, they're getting younger and younger with this racial bullshit that's scary.
Well,
that's the scary part. They're getting younger and younger. So it's not like it was an old hillbilly in the woods that had old ideas or old way of thinking. That is being through Tucker Carlson and all those other weirdos. It's being spread out there, and they're latching onto it.
And the internet. And here's the thing: I don't think you can even begin to have an opinion or call yourself, especially don't call yourself a patriot, if you haven't taken a long, hard look at your country. So both our countries share one thing in the infancy as so-called nations was colonialism. Do you know what I mean? Both of them, came here. Hey, look, a country. People already live here.
Yeah.
Whatever.
They can't do it as
There's
brilliant
more
as
of
we can.
us.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, look, they don't even have
They're
houses.
half naked.
So
What can they be? What can they be thinking?
yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So unless you can really accept the history of your own nation, which was founded on like indigenous peoples
Yeah.
genocide, land
And
theft,
and Glenn,
slavery, and there was just as
they're
much.
trying they're
Go
trying
ahead.
to hide all this shit. They're trying to with this
Well,
burning of the books and critical race thinking
oh,
book. They're
I
and
know.
they're trying to say, well, we don't want to make anybody feel uncomfortable. Well, we're never going to get a result. We're going to have a young white boy out there shooting people up every other month if we don't address it. If we don't stop and say this is bullshit and we need to at least open up, bring it out.
And this is what I'm saying. Like the honesty needs to be there. And you said it just earlier, right? You said like some inbred hillbilly. When I meet guys like that, when I meet a real redneck racist, uh, and I'm not going to say I respect their opinion, but I know who
Yeah.
you are. When you're talking to me, I get you. I'm like, I know exactly what you're about. The dangerous, scary people is when I'm talking to, a middle
Yeah.
class, so-called liberal or progressive white person, and you know me, I like to make other white people uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and as soon as you start to have those difficult conversations, you know this. When a person says, first of all, I'm
Oh
not
yeah, right
racist,
there.
you're
Yeah, they're right
racist
there.
just because you
Yeah,
said
I don't
this.
see color. I
And
don't
then
see
I have had,
color. All that bullshit.
yeah, that's, you don't? Really? That,
You need to see a
how do you
doctor
do
then,
that?
because
You shouldn't be
yeah,
driving, that's for sure. But yeah, I've had people get very irate, like angry, because I will call them out on things that are uh, like performative
Mhm.
allyship. So these are the people that will go to an anti-racism rally to take as many pictures as they can to put that on Instagram to say, look what I'm
Yeah,
doing. Here
here
I
I am.
am.
Oh yeah,
That is not being an ally. And you know what? I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit what your views are, what your opinions are. Just be
yeah,
honest. And that's why stand up comedy. Um, there was tons of comics who I thought, God, you're a
yeah.
dick.
Well,
But at the same
go ahead, go ahead.
time, I had respect for
Okay,
anybody who could
who can
walk on
walk on
that
stage?
stage.
And I was just as a black comic, I think a lot of my humor or subtle humor was me pointing out the prejudice or the hypocrisy in a lot of what people were doing. So back then, that was funny because it wasn't talked about. It wasn't as open as it was now. So that it's so open now, it's not even funny. So back, yeah,
And yeah, and exactly. And I watched you. Uh, I think probably at Punchlines because you were headlining there, so you had a lot of time. And I watched you open up an audience because predominantly
yeah,
white audience. And as soon as you started to say something, you would throw something out there like, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm
yeah, yeah.
black. And just like, and a whole audience would go,
Oh, it was
oh,
like the air came out the balloon. It was like, okay, now we got that on the
thank
balloon. Now
God.
we can talk, right? But
Because we
you
were,
and I would look at situations like that. I remember we were in Victoria. I don't know if you remember this or not. I think Doug was with us as well, and we rented one of those mopeds. We really want to use moped.
Yeah.
And so we went and we said, now we got to go get a beer. So we find this bar.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
It was
right.
this motorcycle bar, redneck. We come in and we still have on our moped helmets. So we walk in the
Yeah.
bar, three dudes, black dude, heavyset dude, Glen Lamont, helmets on our head, uh, talking about, I want a beer. And the guy's like, well, what's up with the helmet? And then we're like, well, we can't figure out how to get them off. Just, right?
Could you give us
Yeah.
a hand?
And so we played on, we were playing on, we knew that it was a bar that just wasn't ready
A biker bar.
for that kind of openness. Uh,
Well, but also like, yeah, there was a lot of examples of what you're saying. I remember when I came to Philly, and you set me up with a gig, and one of the gigs, it was a predominantly black audience,
yeah.
and that was one of the best shows I've ever had. Like, just because it was too funny. As soon as I walked on stage, people were laughing.
Yeah, but let me just point out,
'Cause-
just as a side note, that your comedy did not change. It was just you were in a different atmosphere. Your stand-up time was just as good.
And that was on the, because after that I went to London, and I think I really put the last couple of bullets into my career when I was in London, and I got out of comedy because predominantly it was interfering with my drinking.
Yeah.
So, and it's only now, how many years later, that because for the longest time I didn't have any interest. I got into social work. I got into mental health and addiction work because of my own recovery and rewarding work. But I think you go into that stuff with, I know I did anyways, with, well, the only way you can change the system is be a part of it. Turns out not so much.
Yeah.
And now, somebody else I know said something along the lines, Chris Finn, who's a writer for one of the shows here in Canada, very funny guy, had mentioned that comedy is getting interesting enough again to go back to doing stand-up. Let me ask you, and that's how I feel as well.
With the work that you do is very critical, very serious work. Are you able to find ways to bring out your comedy in that work?
Rick, you know this because you've done real estate. You worked for like that medical company for
medical.
a long time. So you've done the straight world gigs. Sometimes I'm absolutely amazed at how people do that shit. With like, most of the time when I'm not dealing with clients, when I have to deal with like the meetings and the bureaucracy and the management, I'm always trying very hard not to laugh. Because I'm like, are you people serious?
Yeah.
This is how you do really? No. And, like, I have to be very careful about how I word my emails. I usually, when I respond to an email, I have to write one out,
just read it again,
and then discard it.
Hell yeah.
And then write a proper one. I stopped getting invited to meetings a long time ago. Did anybody have any questions? Anybody besides Glenn?
Yeah.
Please, for the love of God.
They drop, low balls that I can sit in a meeting and Glenn, I'm in the back just hitting ones that I want. There's like they're like the perfect line for me, and then bam. So I kind of throw it in my. Right now, I teach real estate agents how to be real estate agents, and so I have trainings on Zoom all the time, and it's like maybe 80, 90 people a class, and in this classroom, humor is a huge part of what I do now.
Massive. And that's the other thing. I've done a lot of public speaking. Talking to fairly large audiences about homelessness and mental health and addiction and poverty and all the social ills of our time. And yet being up there, because I remember big audience, and sometimes you just forget where you are. And somebody interrupted me. They didn't even heckle me.
Exactly.
They just thought, they never, they never thought like I should probably wait till the man's done before I ask any questions. He just jumped in with a question. And I'm like,
Uh-oh.
Ladies and gentlemen, right away. Didn't even think about it. I'm like, ladies and gentlemen, this is what happens when the fetus doesn't get quite enough oxygen. And the crowd was fucking horrified.
I know. You get those red flags.
And then I'm like, oh I'm not in a club.
Did I say that out loud? Oh, absolutely. And you know when the crowd.
But then there are always
people. You know when the crowd is horrified too. You can sense that right off the bat.
Yeah, and then of course there was always people who would come up to you afterwards, and they were like, "That was so funny, man."
Oh yeah.
I like
you didn't enjoy it
because I get so bored. I get so bored at these things. But yeah, going back to basically the way things are right now, and as I said, that Will Smith, Chris Rock thing, I was amazed at that. I was amazed at, well, first of all, Chris Rock handled it like a pro because he's a comic.
Yeah. I don't know.
He kept.
I think that was just so unfortunate. People like that. So we've been trying to get into this awards program forever, and then when we do, this motherfucker comes up.
Exactly. And the thing is, here's Will Smith, who has done so many movies and brilliant actor, all that stuff. However, he's a guy that, like, for example, the hip hop community, not a lot of respect there.
No.
Because he's just like, they think he's just soft.
Yeah.
And then there are people who are like, I've spoken to the guy, but he thinks a lot of himself. And then for him to pull that shit, that's the kind of thing. If somebody insults your wife, you should get upset. But you know what? You wait. And then you go backstage and you're like, come here.
And then
I need to talk to you.
Exactly. And then for nobody to do anything, nobody said, look, Will, you're gonna have to come back here because we can't have you. We can't continue with you being out. We don't know what the fuck you're gonna do. Right? We don't know what you're gonna do. If you're that ignorant to do something like that, then we don't.
Yeah, and two things happened there. Just what you said. Number one, for not that many years ago to have the hashtag Oscars so white, fast forward to Will Smith receiving an Academy Award for Best Actor, and he does that shit. That gives ammunition to every inbred hillbilly redneck trailer trash to go, see, I told you, that's what those people are like.
Right.
And then also for every comic, everybody kind of shared the same sort of underlying fear of like, oh, is this going to be okay now?
And then you see Chappelle, somebody diving on Chappelle.
Yes, which had nothing to do with the guy. Yeah. I thought, it's going to be something about an anti-trans joke that Chappelle did. It was just a crazy guy who apparently, I wanted to bring attention to the gentrification in my grandmother's neighborhood in the Bronx. And you tackled a comedian at the Hollywood Bowl? Hello?
Now wait. Now for as far as Chris Rock, So what upset me about that was the fact that I don't think Will would have done that to a Harris or some other big comic.
No.
He just felt like he assumed Chris didn't know what. You don't know if Chris knows karate or he just made the assumption off appearance and that he could get away with some shit like that.
Well, and also, it was kind of bullshit because everybody saw the same thing. It was live on TV. Everybody saw him laughing at the
Yeah,
joke.
yeah, oh yeah,
That did not help his cause. And then looked over at his wife and went, "Oh,
yeah, yeah. I heard it go, and so as he, what,
I better do
but
something
see,
big."
the thing is, his thought process from when he got up, because that was a long ass walk. That's like an Academy Award walk. His thought process is like, I can't go up here. I got to go up here. I'm not gonna clean his shoes. I can't. What am I? Don't you do? He had so much to think about, and then the same walk back. Oh, that was. You drive to the show and you're happy because you're driving, but when you suck at
Yeah.
that show, you bomb your ass up. That's a long ass ride home. So,
Oh yeah, and you're going over every single
did, and,
joke.
and when he turned around, did I just slap him and just destroy my chances of doing anything?
Oh God! And the thing is, it's going to be nothing but benefit to Chris
Oh
Rock.
yeah, oh yeah,
He's going to be. He'll never be out of work.
absolutely. And he in fact did a line with the Chappelle. Because he came out and said,
Yeah.
"Was that Will?" Right. So he's going to use that from now on.
Oh yeah,
He's riding
that's.
that up.
But you know what? I like the fact that Chris is being sparing.
Yeah. He's not
Like
dropping it all
he's
out.
saving it. He's like, I got to get a lot of
Oh,
mileage out of
absolutely.
this, so I don't want to shoot it all out there at once.
Absolutely.
Um, but yeah, I mean, considering all the shit that's going on in the world, and people are focusing on that, you know, uh, it blows me
Yeah.
away,
Yeah.
and especially when we have. So I think our job as comics is to point out, just like you said, the hypocrisy, the absurdity of it all. And you can get, God, I spent a long time being very angry uh, at everything that was wrong with the world.
Oh yeah.
So, especially when I first stopped drinking and got sober and had, and had a good look around and was
Realize that
like,
you had skin.
how drunk was I? Like, how long has this shit been going on? And but anyways, to be that angry and rage against the machine and not do anything, not be able to do anything about it, as opposed to having a platform like comedy. And if people are laughing at it, they're not hating each other.
Well, the thing is, I think you hit on something. I think more than ever, a comedy is needed, and I think the challenge is to be able to present it through all of this uh, cancel culture bullshit. To be able to present it so that it comes off and still have the creativity and the zing that it had when we first started off. That's the true comic. The comic that can still fight, say the same things that they were saying in a way that gets through all that BS that's out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And now that brings me to my big question. Are you ever going to go back to doing stand up?
That I was thinking about that when I just started chatting with you just recently, and I can command a stage. I can command a room just off my personality. And the reason I got out of comedy was because I wasn't writing. I wasn't coming up with new material that just got me juiced up before I went on stage. And so, if I had material, I'd jump on it in a heartbeat. But it's just I don't want to go up and force that material out just to make the. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I mean, there was guys when I was doing comedy who I didn't think were all that funny, but they sure were hard
Hard
workers,
workers.
and they were always writing, and they became very successful.
Yeah.
And then there was guys like me who, uh, I loved riffing with the
Yeah, you
audience
did.
and improvising with them. I had material, but I didn't work very hard at it, and that can be a detriment when you're good at what you do and you don't have to work very hard at it. Um, then it will eventually come crashing
I
down,
would love
and it did
I
for
would
me.
love to see a Ricky Graham on stage from his perspective today versus back then.
Yes, and that's what I'm talking about, because I have spent so much of my working. I'm hoping that most of my employers aren't listening to this,
I,
but so much of my working hours writing material,
yeah,
because I can't believe how absurd
but
reality
that's
is,
the thing.
and
That's the
how
material. I can't believe how much material's out
and how
there.
people
It's just
how people do this shit, how they go to work
if it wasn't,
with real jobs 5 days a week. If I didn't have, trust me, if I didn't have a family to
yeah,
support,
yeah.
I would have been long gone. But so instead, I'm like, I'm doing this job, and I think it's good work, and I think it's helping, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like it, and I'm in somebody else's world. This
Yeah,
is not my
yeah.
world. This is, you know what I mean?
I've always felt
Um,
like that as well. That my yeah, I could be if I was in the entertainment business, entertainment work, and again, I'm close to it in that I make my students enjoy their learning, and
which is,
which
yeah,
is what I did, and so I'm still doing what I did, and so it's a great gig like that, but there is nothing like those moments that we had at Punchlines, at Yuck Yucks, at Swanee's. There is nothing on earth like that. No,
the
you a
the
comic
comedy
a comic
underground.
can tell you, can give you a general idea of what that feels like. I opened up for BB King. There's 3,000 people in Atlantic City. 3,000 people. And that roar of laughter that came my way, there is nothing on earth like that. Nothing.
No,
But
absolutely. I
then
mean,
one more point. Then you go from there to that 8 to 5 job where they said,
oh God.
"Can I get some more staples over here? I need more staples."
Well, you got to fill out a
Yeah,
form.
it doesn't equate.
What?
Yeah,
So the people I'm still in touch with, beside yourself, um, Ron Reed.
Ron's a good guy.
Yeah, Ron's great. Him and Renee, his lovely wife, live in
Yeah,
Arizona
yeah.
now. They I don't know, something about the shitty weather in Seattle. Um, and who else on Facebook? I got Jeff Diddy Brand.
Yeah,
Remember Jeff?
well, that I was just going to say, I was going to follow up with that and say that I'm having a great time with all those other comics like Rod Long, Bob Bailey, Jeff Young,
Rod, yes,
all on Facebook, and so they're still kicking it. They're still doing gigs,
I know.
and I love that. I love that in them, and it's a different relationship, but it's really cool.
I would love to see all those guys. I would love to see an old timers Seattle comedy night.
Oh yeah, that would be a blast.
You know what I mean? I should pester Ron,
Right, yeah.
because he's a
Yeah,
promoter,
and then
right?
Jeff Young too. Jeff Young would be another one that would work.
Jeff. Oh, and
'Cause I
Jeff.
think
Yeah,
Rod Long
for
and
sure.
Jeff Young had a podcast going on, a sports podcast.
Yeah. Well,
Commentary.
they were both big
Yeah.
sports guys. Yep, huge sports guys. Um, and yeah, let me see.
I would love to see
I'm
you
just trying
do
to think.
stand
I
up
mean,
again, man. Glenn Lamont,
well,
Glenn Lamont at your age and with your background, man, that's something that I'd buy a ticket for.
I think, I'll be honest with you, just to wrap it up here. When I first got sober, I was like, I don't think I can do comedy or write or or much of anything, because you kid yourself into, there's that myth about, the creative, uh, dark, hurting individual, and it's all bullshit.
Yeah.
It's like, at the end of the day, I was a drunk and a messy one.
And funny as
Um,
hell.
but the longer I stayed sober, you know, I started writing. I started writing short stories. I started writing pieces, and I still write on a regular basis. Um, but yeah, I just realized, oh no, it's not about that at all. It doesn't change your creativity. It doesn't change your sense of humor. If anything, it makes it better because I can remember shit. Um, and do you find this? Ricky? Do you find this seriously? I can't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday, but I could probably tell you the room number you and I stayed in
Absolutely.
when we were in Nanaimo
Absolutely. It's about
in
perspective, man. I mean,
1984.
I have keys, all those keys. I have a board of all those keys
Do
to
you?
turn in. Not because now they use the cards, so they're really collector's items.
Yes. Oh man, that's brilliant. Well, I would love to see that. Listen, I can't thank you enough for coming on the program. I hope you will come back
Yeah,
again, and we'll catch up. And I don't know, maybe you'll keep doing your politics, and before you know it, you'll be mayor of Seattle or some
absolutely.
shit.
Hey, Glenn,
And
it is such a treat
yeah,
to have been spent this time with you, man. Um, I am so
yes, and
You are my boy. I'm so proud of what you're doing and what you're all about. And most definitely, we got to hook up and get together again.
and the other person I'm still in touch with is your cousin Larry.
Yeah, he's flying to Cabo tonight for a jazz festival. Just talk to him.
How does he? How did they let him into
Yeah,
another country?
I'm on standby. I gotta wait. I'm on deck. So I'm making a call any moment now.
Listen.
You got something about lethal hands and lethal weapons. You got to come get this guy.
um, wow, I can't thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight on Wallace Hartley Presents the Podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, please please subscribe. If you are listening to us on Spotify or Google Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, please follow us. We love doing this, and we're certainly going to have. I'm going to have, honestly, I'm going to make a point of having as many comics on the program as I can to break up all that serious social commentary and political stuff, because it's so much fun for me. Thank you again, Ricky Graham, for being here. And God, it's just been so much fun. And well, thanks. Good night, everybody.